Have you ever met one of those people who just radiates charisma? You know, a natural-born leader that people just can't help but follow? Well, today, we're going to dive deep into the personality type that often fits that description to a T. The introverted feeling, or FI type, from the STIFIn personality model. Let's get right into it and uncover what makes these complex and totally fascinating individuals tick.
So what is it? What's the secret ingredient that powers a truly charismatic leader? What makes people not just listen but want to follow them? The answer, as we're about to find out, is all about a unique personality, fueled by this incredibly powerful, internally focused emotional intelligence.
All right, here's our game plan for today. First, we'll break down what introverted feeling even is. Then we'll get into their physical and core traits. After that, we'll look at their unique strengths and, you'll love this, their paradoxes. And finally, we'll wrap up with the keys to their success and the career paths where they really shine.
Okay, let's jump right into section 1. What exactly is an FE? To really get it, you gotta look under the hood. We're talking about their engine, their driver, and the unique operating system that's running the whole show up in their brain.
It's actually a lot simpler than it sounds when you break it down. So the capital F stands for feeling. That's their core engine, their intelligence machine. It's all about emotion. The lowercase I is for introvert, and that's the driver. So what does that mean? It means their powerful emotional engine is steered from the inside, processing everything internally before it radiates outward.
Now let's get a little geeky for a second and talk about the brain. The FI's whole operating system is located in the right limbic lobe. That's a big hub for emotion. But the really interesting part is the layer. It's in the inner white matter, or limbic kananputi as it's called in the source material. You can just think of this as a super dense emotional core. And because it's so deep inside, their drive just naturally radiates from the inside out. That's where that constant charisma comes from.
All right, moving on. How does all that internal wiring actually show up in the real world? Let's paint a picture of what an FI looks like and how they act. We're talking about their body and their soul.
Physically, the technical term for the fill type is dysplastic. But here's a much easier way to think about it. It's like a car with a giant engine in a small chassis. They often have this really large chest, which houses a super powerful heart and lungs, but it's paired with a smaller bone structure. And that's the secret to their incredible stamina. Their respiratory system is so efficient it can fuel them for the long haul, kind of like a marathon runner. And check this out. Here are the 10 core traits that, according to the STIFIn concept, are just baked into an FI's personality. I mean, you see the obvious ones like leader and idealistic, but look at friendship appeal. That's that magnetic quality we were talking about, the thing that just pulls people in. And remember, these aren't learned behaviors. This is who they are at their core.
Okay, now for one of my favorite parts. Let's talk about the FI's superpowers, their biggest strengths, and the absolutely fascinating paradoxes that make them so compelling and, let's be honest, sometimes a little complicated. The FI's #1 strength, their real superpower, is their sky-high emotional quotient, or EQ. This gives them this profound capacity for empathy. They don't just understand what you're feeling, they feel it with you. It's this deep connection that makes them so naturally popular and well-liked. And that long emotional breath we talked about with their physique, well, that translates into some serious mental resilience. But, and this is a big but, here's the twist. For every major strength an FI has, they often have an opposite, kind of contradictory trait hiding in there too. This is what's called their diametral nature. So here's the key takeaway. If you really want to understand an FI, you have to embrace both sides of the coin. Let's look at a few examples.
Okay, first up. On one hand, you have this incredibly charismatic leader, right? Full of energy, inspiring everyone around them. But on the other hand, behind that strong public face, they can be surprisingly sensitive and get offended pretty easily. Deep down, they have this real desire to be taken care of, even pampered a bit. And the paradoxes just keep coming. An NIFI is genuinely one of the most helpful people you'll ever meet. They're always the first to jump in and offer support. But at the same time, they might be subconsciously keeping a little mental tally. They often help with this quiet expectation that, the favor will be returned someday.
And this last one. This one can be really confusing for people on the outside. The FI feels empathy on such a profound level. They truly get the emotional state of others. And yet, even with all that deep feeling, they can sometimes be, slow to actually do something about it. They need to process it all internally before they make a move.
So, with such a complex personality, how does an NFI go about building a successful life and career? Well, it's all about two things: building a platform for their influence, and then finding the perfect stage to stand on. Let's dig into that.
The formula for an FI success really boils down to this. They need to create a platform. Now, that could be a company, a social movement, an organization, anything that lets them build influence. From that platform, they use their natural charisma to gather love and loyalty, fully stepping into that leader role. But, and this is so important, the platform can't be about short-term pragmatic goals. It has to be built on a powerful, emotional, long-term vision.
So where do they find a stage like that? Well, there are 4 main arenas where an FI's talents are just a perfect fit. You've got politics and government, where their leadership and influence can really flourish. Then there's law, which totally leverages their powers of persuasion. And of course, the arts, a perfect outlet for all that deep emotional expression.
And the list goes on. Just think about the common thread here. Psychologist, diplomat, public speaker, activist. Every single one of these jobs is built on a foundation of deep human connection and the ability to inspire real change through emotion. You see the pattern, right? So, if we boil it all down, the perfect career for an INFJ has to hit these 4 keywords. It has to be a role that allows them to feel, to really engage emotionally. It needs long breathing room, a marathon, not a sprint. It absolutely has to give them a chance to lead. And finally, it has to be a path where they can be admired, where they can be loved. Because for an INFJ, that is the ultimate fuel.
And that brings us to our final thought. We've just said that an FI is powered by connection, by the love and admiration they get from others. So, that leaves us with a pretty big question. If love is their fuel, how does an FI lead when their tank is empty? What happens when they don't feel that support coming back? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning into this explainer.